Luke Belmar, the famous e-commerce and crypto guru, has been sued for fraud by his friend and business partner Steve Tan, who is like an OG in the e-commerce space. Steve and Luke were business partners. They started Capital Club together, but now it seems like they're enemies. I have right here with me the official court documents that have a lot of interesting details that I'm gonna review and share with you in a moment. And beyond going over the documents, I want to provide some insight into this whole situation and the guru/influencer industry from my point of view, which I would say it is somewhat unique, since I personally met both Luke and Steve back in 2018 or 2019, before they were famous basically, or before they were as famous as they are today, especially Luke. And I got to know them a little bit, and more so Luke than Steve. Steve not as much, but I've seen the entire journey right from the beginning, and I think I can bring a more nuanced perspective than maybe other people can. And also, since I have other friends who also have like big personal brands and they've made like millions of dollars online selling courses and all of that stuff, I think some of the insights that I have into that industry and the behind the scenes and understanding these people's personalities, like I think we can have an interesting video here where I share some interesting stuff with you. In the case of Steve and Luke, as I said, I think I met them both in either 2018 or 2019 in Singapore at an e-commerce mastermind that both Steve and his brother even organized for e-commerce owners. I was doing e-commerce back then. I had reached 100K a month in revenue, and I wanted to go to the mastermind because supposedly Steve Tan back then was making, I think he said like 300K a day with e-commerce, and I was doing like 100K a month. So I was like, okay, what is this guy doing to make so much? Like, let me learn from him. I think the mastermind was like 6K or something like that. And there I met Steve and also Luke, right? Who was already working with Steve. I think Luke was helping him organize the whole event, and they were also working on some other things together. And I think back then, in terms of revenue and success, I think Luke and we were not that far off. Maybe Luke was making a little bit more than me, but I don't think he was making that much more than me, at least as far as I know, right? Then supposedly, allegedly, he went on to make so much more. And honestly, during that mastermind, here's the thing, we got along pretty well. After the mastermind, we jumped on a few Skype calls. We shared business ideas. He helped me with some stuff for free. And then I also helped him with some other stuff because I eventually transitioned from doing e-commerce into affiliate marketing. And he was curious to know how I was doing affiliate marketing because I started having really good results. Maybe you could argue even better results than what I was doing with e-commerce. So he wanted to get some insights into how the whole thing worked. And then years later, we met again in Bali. He was organizing like some private event or something like that. And I also met his brother for the first time. And then afterwards, they invited me to his villa and whatnot. So we were able to spend some private time together. So I want to share my point of view on this from my perspective. But just as a disclaimer, I'm not a friend of his, okay? Even though we've talked and whatnot, like, we're not friends. Maybe you could say that he's an acquaintance, but I don't even know if that's the case anymore because I think the last time we spoke, maybe it was like 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm not gonna be defending anybody in this video. I just wanna go over the documents, the court case, and share some insights with you about the whole influencer industry, okay? So first of all, Steve Tan posted this tweet like literally yesterday where he said that the lawsuit against Luke Belmar, his wife, and Capital Club is now public. Okay, and then if you go right here, you have the link to the court document that I have here. And here, as you can see, it is for fraud. So the introduction already, it is quite interesting. This is basically like the TLDR of everything that happened and what they're claiming. They say this action, so this lawsuit, arises from a calculated scheme by Luke Belmar and Lara Belmar, Lara is Luke's wife, to defraud, deceive, and oust Steve Tan from the very business he co-founded, funded, and built Capital Club. He invested more than $4 million, drawn from Capital Club's operating revenue, and reinvested into the company's infrastructure. He also devoted years and effort to building and growing the business, and in return, Luke promised to buy out his interest, but instead exploited that promise to seize control of the company operations, reroute millions in revenue, and launch a directly competing venture, Gem Hunters, using Steve Tan's work and resources. Which I remember back then when that happened, I was somewhat confused because when I started to see the whole thing with Gem Hunters that Luke was launching, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I remember seeing it and thinking like, I don't know why he's launching this. If he already has the whole thing with Capital Club, like why is he now charging again for another community? It was kind of confusing. And I mean, this explains a lot what was happening. Later on, there are some points that explain this part more in depth. So you're about to see how that whole thing worked. Luke Belmar's conduct, including false promises, unauthorized account removals, because I think what happened with this, the account removals, like I think Steve Tan was kicked out from the Capital Club Discord's community and all that stuff. And hidden transfers through crypto wallets and financial diversion violates the core duties owed between business partners and co-owners. There was fraudulent inducement, civil conspiracy, yada, yada, yada. And then Steve Tan is basically doing this to recover the losses that he sustained and to expose the scope of Luke Belmar's misconduct and to make clear that fraud, self-dealing, and abuse of trust in a business partnership will not be tolerated. Then here there's some information about the parties, which doesn't really matter that much. And then when we get to this part number 5, the factual allegations, I think this part is actually quite interesting because they give you like the whole time frame and how things developed and how everything happened right from the beginning. So basically in 2018, Luke messaged Steve Tan directly via social media to help Steve Tan with social media personal brand growth. And here's the thing, I remember when I originally met Luke, I think maybe it was in 2019, I don't remember. He told me that he had like some kind of social media company and something like that, and that he had helped people grow in the past. I think maybe he even mentioned the fact that he was helping Steve with his whole personal brand and all that. And basically what it says here is that Steve Tan would not realize until much later that Luke basically achieved success and brand growth. Like basically the way he was growing Steve Tan's personal brand was basically through buying fake bot followers for Steve Tan's accounts. So this is already like some kind of foreshadowing about everything that's about to happen with him. And then they said that over the next few years, Steve Tan provided substantial mentorship and business support for Luke, including free access to mastermind events in Phuket, Thailand, and Singapore. That's the one I was at. Also, I thought this was weird. And hosting Luke in his own home for weeks at a time. I don't know, this one... What do you mean? He was living at your place like for weeks? I don't quite get this one. And here it says like, while taking advantage of Steve Tan's support, Luke cultivated an online persona, portraying himself as a successful entrepreneur who had earned tens of millions of dollars through e-commerce and cryptocurrency. And then basically they explain here that the reason why he wanted to do this is that all of these crypto and blockchain projects, they can grow massively through social media marketing. And if you can build like a large following and you can create some authority, it is very easy then to attract investors and sell memberships, market products and services at a global scale, right? And basically they claim that this is what Luke was basically doing, just creating these fake successful personas so he could sell basically whether it's Capital Club or whatever service he was promoting. Then already here, like the first lie, it says that in 2020 Luke already was claiming through a press release that Steve Tan was his business partner, which back then he was still not. And when that happened, Steve Tan was not aware of it. And basically they say that Steve Tan would realize all of that later, and basically what Luke was doing was the classic, they literally wrote it here, fake it till you make it. But the thing is that here it says like in 2022, Steve Tan agreed with Luke to co-found Capital Club and now actually be business partners. And here they explain what Capital Club is. I assume most people watching this video know, right? But it's basically like this online network of entrepreneurs where you can learn and connect and create partnerships and all this stuff. I don't know, personally, I got inside of it when they launched it. It was pretty, I would say it was below average. Like, yeah, I didn't really like it. Like when you have such a large audience like what Luke had at that point in time, like inevitably the kind of audience that you attract, there's a lot of low level quality people, to be honest. And I remember like most people who you talked with in Capital Club, they were pretty mediocre. It's like, I don't know, going and speaking with the average Andrew Tate follower. For sure, there's some smart people that follow Andrew Tate, but on average, especially the hardcore followers that would be inside the community, I assume they're not going to be that bright. And I don't know, I've never been inside Andrew Tate's community, so I'm just assuming it. But at least with the case of Luke Belmar and the whole thing with Capital Club, I don't know, the kind of audience that he was able to build, I'm not a fan of. It's not an audience of people who are independent thinkers, and it's not people who are that bright. Like for sure, there's some incredible people there. I mean, it's such a big audience that it's just a numbers game. But in general, like the people who are gonna be more active on the Discord and leaving comments and all that, they're not that interesting. Okay, they're pretty. Just to use Luke's terms, they're all NPCs, okay? That's what Luke would say. Even his own followers are NPCs, okay? So now here it gets very interesting, okay? From point 27, then on forward, now it gets really, really interesting, because now they start to make this connection. Like, obviously they realize that the success of Capital Club depends directly on its ability to attract a large number of paying members through online marketing, content distribution, and the personal branding of its founders. That is a key point. So Steve Tan was the CEO and operational manager, overseeing execution, hiring, and systems development, marketing, and day-to-day management. So Luke Belmar naturally assumed a more front-facing role in branding and public communications. So that's why Luke received most of the fame. That was part of the strategy. But here's where it gets even crazier. At first, they both had an LLC in Wyoming, but the following year, they changed it to a company that Steve Tan had in Hong Kong, which would become the parent company and financial repository. So what happened is that Steve Tan invested more than $4.15 million into the business, including over $3.1 million for media marketing infrastructure and events, nearly $1 million in payroll, and over $340,000 worth of interest-free loans to the business. So here's the thing, like, and by the way, I just realized that with my camera I was cutting off some of the text, but now it's fine. So these $3.1 million that they spent on media, I assume that most of it went to the development of Luke Belmar's personal brand, because that was like the main driver to sell Capital Club. So all that stuff that he was claiming, like, oh, I'm getting all these views on TikTok and all that stuff, all these billions of views, I guess that these $3.1 million, that's what was funding it. And then here, obviously, they claim that Steve Tan's investments were the foundation of Capital Club's rapid growth and success. And then when they launched, they generated in October more than 2.2 million in revenue. And then in November and December, the business grossed over 4.2 million in 3 months, which honestly, it's not as much as I thought, considering also like the investment that he made right here, but yeah. And then, okay, here it says like over the course of 2 years, Steve Tan and his team built Luke Personal's brand to unprecedented levels, including the use, okay, this is very interesting, including the use of Steve Tan's personal resources and connections to provide Luke with unique interview and podcast opportunities, and generating over 10 million social media followers across multiple platforms and more than 2 billion views in content. Okay, that's what I was just saying right before. Luke's personal Instagram account grew from 41,000 followers to over 685,000 followers, and his X account expanded from 0, literally, to over 700,000. And these achievements were the direct result of, well, basically like Steve Tan's money, right, and marketing systems, everything that he paid for. And Steve Tan even used his personal resources and connections to get Luke onto different podcasts and interviews. Now, here's where the problems begin, okay? Luke then leveraged this influence, built entirely on Capital Club's resources and at Steve Tan's expense, to secure deals, partnerships, and opportunities for his own benefit, while cutting Steve Tan out of any share in the resulting revenue or relationships. Which, I mean, these results were made possible by the infrastructure and personnel and systems that Steve Tan had financed and built. Now, here's where it gets even more crazy, which I think I mentioned before, the whole thing with Gem Hunters. While still operating as a Steve Tan's business partner in Capital Club, Luke Belmar began developing a competing internet-based business offering called Gem Hunters, which again, it is kind of the same thing. Subscription-based online membership community marketed as an investment and wealth-building society. So basically kind of like the same thing as Capital Club, but specialized in cryptocurrency projects. And again, like Capital Club, Gem Hunters relies heavily on online marketing and the whole thing of personal branding that Steve Tan had already built for Luke Belmar. And basically it had the same business model, and he built all of it on the same audience, systems, and staff that Steve Tan had already developed and funded. And none of this was disclosed to Steve Tan, okay? Here it says that Luke even stole some employees from Capital Club under the pretext of restructuring, which that is crazy, that is so Machiavellian, when in fact he was just shifting them into a parallel operation under his exclusive control. He even made some employees and experts sign new contracts under his new LLC so that he could reassign their employment away from Capital Club into this new competing business. And Luke Belmar used this tactic to transfer ownership of course content, intellectual property, and personnel. And here's the crazy part, like in less than 1 year, Gem Hunters grew to over 2,500 paying members, generating approximately $10 million in subscription revenue. So it's like, I don't know, as far as I understand, he might have even made more money than what Capital Club originally did. And here it says that upon information, I believe like 80 to 90% of Gem Hunters members may have originated from the Capital Club ecosystem just based on overlap. So that is crazy. And then basically here they claim that Luke got like $15 million in profits from this competing venture, which is obviously clear violation of the partnership that they had. Then in late 2024, Steve Tan indicated that he wanted to leave the partnership. Luke Belmar agreed to buy out Steve Tan's shares basically if Steve Tan transferred everything over to him. So they both agreed upon an initial term sheet for the buyout offer. And then basically Luke told Steve that he would pay him if Steve agreed to basically transfer everything. Okay, all the access, all the logins, operational control systems, the playbooks, the growth engines, the workflows, everything that Steve Tan had built. Okay, like basically back-end access. So I guess like to the Facebook ads, Google ads, Stripe accounts, like literally everything. Basically like giving Luke the keys to the business. Now here comes the problem. Steve Tan did it. He started to do the transition in August of 2024. He says like literally transferred everything to, interestingly, both Luke and his wife. And once they gave him full access, basically Luke locked out Steve Tan out of all of the systems. And basically he lost like all administrative rights and control. But here's the thing, Luke did not pay. Here it says like, yeah, Luke was saying repeatedly and assured to Steve that the buyout was imminent and merely awaiting for legal finalization. But in reality, it was just a facade. And basically he took full operational control of Capital Club without paying Steve Tan a single dollar. And then basically in June 2025, I think what it says here is that Luke basically admitted that, yeah, I'm not gonna, the whole buyout thing is not gonna happen. And here they say that this whole thing, it was not a misunderstanding. It was basically a very well thought out plan to take control of the whole thing. Now here there's more like back-end problems that I'm not gonna cover, but here it says that during this period, Luke started to make public and private negative comments about Steve Tan. He said that he left the business for jealous, selfish reasons and that only Luke had built Capital Club. Here also they claim that even before this whole thing happened, they were already taking money out of the business. Like in March 2024, they took $665,000 and they sent it to undisclosed recipients. And here they say that those recipients were Luke and his wife, basically for their personal benefit. And here again, they use these as examples of a deliberate scheme, you know, the whole thing that they were planning to do. Here it also says that they were playing with the books, changing the numbers, a lot of anomalies, untraceable transfers, internal inconsistencies, and that's basically how they did it, okay? And that's basically what happened. And then, I don't know, some more other things, but yeah, that's basically it. That's the whole case. Now, here's the thing. I just want to make one point with this, to be honest. Like, this whole video is just an excuse for me to say something that I have said so many times in this channel that I'm like a broken record. The people who follow me, they know about this because I keep repeating it almost in every single video that I make. And the thing is that, look, this keeps happening over and over and over again. Like, how many times do we have to trust on some online persona, some influencer, some guru, just to then figure out that they were either a fraud or incompetent or a scammer or something along those lines? Like, how many times does it have to happen over and over and over again? And people keep waiting for the next one. And the thing is that people online, especially in this space, which is like the business space, the make money online space, even like the whole industry of like personal development and self-improvement and all of that, people keep looking for these personas, these figures, these gurus to save them. And people put all their trust in them. And they invest their money and their time. And they also build like this parasocial relationship with them. Like, they put this person on a pedestal and they really look up to them. They follow everything that they say and they give them money and all of these things. But then like eventually people realize that there's something off and something like this happens, or whatever has happened to most influencers after like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And it's like people basically discovered that there were a lot of lies in the whole story. There were a lot of gaps and there was a lot of deception and manipulation. As you can see, like just what happened right here. And the problem is that these guys keep getting better and better and better and better. And the mindset that people have is like, once we find one snake or one rat or whatever you want to call them, then it's like, okay, this guy was a fraud. Who is the one I can trust? Let me look for the next one, right? But then you keep running into the same problem, right? I mean, if you go online, back in the day when we got started, I got started into this whole space in personal development and business and all of that. I think back in 2015, I think back then it was Ty Lopez, with the Here in My Garage. And which personally, by the way, also Ty recently has been under a lot of pressure and fire and controversy. I think he's been sued. Although I still like Ty, to be honest, but that's another topic for another day. But we had Ty, and then it was, I don't know, Gary Vee, and then it was Grant Cardone, and then it was someone else, and then it was Andrew Tate, and then it was Luke Belmar, and then it's gonna be, I don't know, there was also Hamza, and there's gonna be someone else. And like people go into this, they obsess over someone for a few months and they consume all their content and all of that, but then nothing truly changes in their lives. They get the illusion that they're learning something, but they're actually not learning anything. They're not making any progress in their lives. It gives the false illusion of progress, because supposedly you feel as if you're learning from them and they're giving you the secrets to life and business and making money and all of that. But it's just like they're just playing with words, and they know how to speak and say nice things that sound interesting, but in fact there's not that much behind it. And eventually you follow these guys and you realize, like, okay, I'm not getting that much out of it anyways, and you jump to the next one and the next one and the next one, right? And a lot of people get mad, when these guys get exposed. But here's the thing, and here's the reflection. What if there is a different model? What if there is a different way to go about things? What if there's no next guy to look for, right? What if we don't keep waiting for the next guru, what if the next influencer, the next person to come and save us? And this is like the main message of my personal brand, right? There is no next guru. You are the next guru, but of yourself. If you go back and you watch the first videos that I posted on my channel, they're all about this. I even have one video that's called Be Your Own Guru, right? Like my personal brand is the anti-personal brand. I said it on so many videos, like, stop following all these guys, even stop following me, right? If you go to my website, again, let me share a screen with you. The truth is that this is my website, right? Basically, like, my whole life philosophy is this whole thing of like dividing life into these 4 pillars: health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality, and trying to master all of them, right? And in my website, I have 4 sections, 4 articles, where I explain for free how I've done really well in each one of these pillars at different times in my life. But the thing is that I'm also kind of in this whole, like, let me teach you how I did this and how I did that. So I say it for myself too, like, hey, stop following me, like, figure this whole thing out yourself, right? Be your own guru, trust yourself, be your own master, be your own teacher. Like, if what you truly care about in life, and I genuinely believe this, is real progress, like a dramatic change in your life, I think that will happen when you turn towards yourself. Right? All this energy that a lot of people who are interested in self-improvement, all this energy and attention and money and everything that they're pouring outwards towards someone else, if you turn that into yourself and you became your own teacher and you try to figure out things on your own and you develop your own intuition, which is a big part of this, if you develop the skills of how to problem solve, how to analyze, how to be self-reliant, instead of going for someone else for the answers, right? For a fish, you're going to other people, to other gurus, for them to give you the fish. If instead you learn how to become the fisherman, that, in my opinion, is the right move. That, I think, is what the world nowadays truly needs. People keep waiting for heroes. People keep waiting for the second coming of Christ and all these things, right? I know I'm going to trigger Christians here, but it's like people keep waiting for this external thing. I sent a message today, a few hours ago, on my Telegram group about this thing. Like, in spirituality, there's this concept, right, of killing the Buddha, which basically means, like, a lot of people put Buddha as an external authority, right? And you look up to this external thing above you that tells you how do you need to do things and what you need to do, and, like, you need to follow their instructions, and this is how things work, right? But that, in a way, is limiting, right? And what they often talk about is that, I mean, at the end of the day, the goal in spirituality and Buddhism and all of that is to become the Buddha, to become enlightened. But you cannot do that if you keep seeing the Buddha as this external authority that's above you, right? So there's this whole thing, this whole idea of you have to kill the Buddha to become the Buddha, right? Symbolically speaking, you have to kill the Buddha. So it's kind of like the same thing with building your own life and truly making progress. And, like, the thing is that you have to become the Buddha. You have to become the guru, right? Screw all these guys, like, screw me and Luke Belmar and Hamza and Ty Lopez and whoever. Like, fuck him, okay? You become them. You may, like, I said this, like, why I make YouTube videos? Because I'm making them for myself, That's truly why I'm making them. If you think about it, like if you go through my channel, you will see that lately I mostly upload videos on spirituality and philosophy. Why? Because that's what I'm currently interested in, right? I used to post a lot of videos about business. Nowadays, not as much, because that's not like a big focus for me right now. Same with like health or the other pillars, that I talk about on my website. So that is the thing. That is the sauce. That is the big secret. And I think that's what the world needs, for people to become more self-reliant, for them to become their own guru, their own savior, their own hero, right? Be your own hero, be your own guru. So anyway, that is my message. That is the ultimate message. I sound like a broken record. Every single video of mine is the exact same thing. But anyways, also quit social media. Quit social media. Uninstall Instagram. Delete TikTok, especially TikTok. It's absolute trash. Stop watching YouTube. Go live your own life, make your own stuff. And if you're on social media, do your own thing. Make your own channel like I did, and just share your ideas and all that. So that's basically it. Nothing else to say. Somewhat of an improvised video, to be honest. But that's it. Even though I've said all of that stuff, if for some reason you want to follow me, I have a Telegram group that you can join that's completely free, where you can find some like-minded people. Okay, if you like this whole idea of this balanced life, of mastering health and business and relationships and spirituality and all of that, and you want to meet like-minded people who are also into this and spirituality and all this stuff, I have a really nice community on Telegram for free that you can join. And I do have a private consultancy in case that for some reason you want my help with anything. You can book a call with me and I can help you out with whatever. But again, be your own guru. Maybe you shouldn't, okay? And that's it, okay? Just take care. Have a great life. I'll see you very soon. Peace.